Now, joining us is to take a look at the latest developments on North Korea. We have with us Dr. Jung-yeop from the Sejong Institute. Thank you for coming in today and being here today.
Thanks for having me today.
Perhaps President Moon's biggest task in his trip to New York was to get President Trump to agree to further talks with North Korea amid recent stalled talks. We can all agree that that's pretty much been achieved, would you not say?
Yes, President Trump and Secretary Mike Pompeo mentioned that they got the invitation from North Korea and they accepted it. So I think that President Trump is going to meet Chairman Kim very soon. And I think that President Moon's role was there to make this much more possible, because even though there was a possibility that President Trump wanted to have a meeting with Kim Jong-un, even without the meeting with our own president, but President Moon's meeting with President Trump made it much more has a role of reinforcing the President Trump's belief that it is worth to pursue to have a meeting with Kim Jong-un, even though there are a lot of criticism in Washington to have a hasty meeting with Kim Jong-un.
So during his trip as well, I mean, some of this criticism was around the fact that President Moon talked a lot about declaring the end of the Korean War and that it was needed to secure a permanent peace regime on the peninsula. But also he argued that it was needed to try and get North Korea back to negotiating table and also to take real steps towards a denuclearization. Do you think President Moon was able to convince the US and the international community that this was the right way forward?
So the declaration to end the war is pursued by South Korean government since the President Moon took the office last year, because President Moon believed that this is the kind of mechanism that North Korea can use to pursue the denuclearization by itself. And also North Korea has argued since July that United States should do the declaration to the end of war according to the Singapore summit, and also it's the corresponding measures to the initial measures that they already took since the April 27th Inter-Korean summit. So they believe, both North and South Korean believes that this is the way to discuss further on denuclearization. However, there is a criticism within the United States that it's not even clear for them how declaration to end the war can be linked to the denuclearization process, because North Korea has not really mentioned about how it is linked. So within the Pyongyang declaration this time, they mentioned that if U.S. took the corresponding measures, they didn't explicitly mention that it is the declaration to end the war, but we all believe that it's declaration to the end the war. Then they can exchange it with the dismantling of Yongbyon nuclear facility. So now U.S. government has demanded North Korea to submit the declaration to the whole list of its nuclear programs and materials. Now North Korea said that if U.S. is giving a declaration to end the war, they are willing to exchange it with the dismantling of Yongbyon. So they have not mentioned about inspections and other measures to verify whether Yongbyon is completely dismantled and what kind of facilities are there. So I think that there's still a way, long way, to convince the United States that declaration to end the war actually led to the whole denuclearization of North Korea.
But doesn't the fact that President Trump is now agreeing to meet with Kim Jong-un again for a second time mean that there is some perhaps leeway that the US is ready to give, perhaps towards the declaration, end of declaration of war, or any other kind of measures that US is ready to give?
So it is very difficult these days to analyze the U.S. government as a whole, because in the past we analyze U.S. government as a unitary actor, but these days we have to separate President Trump and the U.S. government. So there's a skepticism within the U.S. government about the intention of North Korean government, North Korean and its leader Kim Jong-un about giving up their own nuclear weapons. But President Trump seemed to buy Chairman Kim's argument. So there's a possibility that President Trump agreed to declare a war of end of Korean War. But at the same time, there is a concern from the U.S. government that then what will U.S. government get at the exchange of declaration to end the war? So we'll see how the U.S. government and President Trump reconcile their different views on the declaration to end the war.
Let's turn to Donald Trump's remarks about Kim Jong-un at the UN General Assembly. I mean, it is quite a remarkable turnaround compared to what he said last year and compared to what he said this year. Let's take a quick look at this video that we have got prepared, comparing the two speeches from 2017 and this year, 2018.
The United States has great strength and patience. But if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. We have engaged with North Korea to replace the specter of conflict with a bold and new push for peace. I would like to thank Chairman Kim for his courage and for the steps he has taken.
So, from Rocket Man to Chairman Kim with courage for the steps that he has taken. It's really a remarkable change in tone. What do you make of Trump's speech at the UN General Assembly this year?
I think that there are two reasons why President Trump mentioned very differently compared to his last year's speech. First, he has to show that his policy with regard to North Korea has been successful. He knows that there are a lot of criticism within Washington and the international community that he did not lead North Korea in the way of denuclearization yet. So he has to say that his policy toward North Korea has been successful. And second, that there's a possibility that high possibility that he's going to meet with Kim Jong-un again in the near future. So for that two reasons, that he has to say very highly of Chairman Kim this time, even though the whole speech of this year was given to criticize like socialist and communist countries and so-called rogue states. So North Korea can be still considered in that category, but he differentiated North Korea from other rogue states this time.
Trump made various remarks over the last few days on North Korea, apart from what he said at the UN General Assembly. But perhaps one of the most striking, I think I found, was that there's comments where he made that he's not concerned about the timeline for North Korea's denuclearization. He said whether it takes 2 years or 3 years, that's, it doesn't really matter at the moment. He's saying, but so far it's been understood that the US has been demanding a timeline from North Korea. But now it seems like there's been a change in policy from the US. I mean, what do we make of these Trump's comments? So
first, what President Trump mentioned today does not reflect any change in the U.S. government policy toward North Korea. So the reason that President Trump mentioned that no timeline is important, because that he has to defend himself from the criticism from the Washington, that the Washington think tanks and the experts has argued that since Singapore, there is no real progress made to the denuclearization of North Korea. So they criticize President Trump's approach. So President Trump now has to defend his policy toward North Korea. So he mentioned that North Korea has not tested anything, and North Korea has returned the remains of the U.S. soldiers, and North Korea is dismantling its nuclear test site and also the missile engine site. So the reason why he mentioned that the timeline is not important, because he has to defend the slow progress of his policy toward North Korea. And also he has to defend himself in the future when his second meeting with Kim Jong-un does not produce any concrete measures again. So I think it's more of in defensive nature than a reflection of the change in the policy.
Let me go back to a little bit more about President Moon's message about North Korea that he's made over the last few days as well. So let's see, one of the things he mentioned during his trip was he stressed how economic cooperation with North Korea could open new doors for everyone in the region, giving the potential example as the East Asian railroad community that he mentioned as a prime example. What do you make of his intentions as giving these examples? Do you think he has an eye on the international sanctions on North Korea and about possibly raising them?
So I think that if United States agree to announce the declaration to end the war, then the next step might be about the sanctions imposed on North Korea. So without lifting sanctions, there is no project possible with the North Korea in economic terms. So I think that by stressing the importance of this economic project, which can lead to the opening of the North Korea and which also can lead to the stability in the region and the world, that is why President Moon stressed the importance of this economic project. And in the meantime, that he insinuated that if U.S. government and international community loosen the sanctions to kick off this economic project, we can see very different behaviors from North Korea. I think that that's the purpose of President Moon's message this time.
Another concern that President Moon tried to allay during his visit was the fact about declaring the end of the Korean War could leave the region at risk, especially if U.S. forces were to be taken out of the Korean peninsula. But he argued that even with a peace regime, with a peace agreement, having U.S. forces in Korea would be possible to play a role as a stabilizing force in the region. Does this argument hold water?
So this discussion about declaration to end the war was very tricky. So technically and legally, declaration to end the war is just a symbolic, and it's political, so it's not binding at all. So all the legal foundation for the UN command and the presence of the USFK are not affected by the declaration to end the war. However, politically, declaration to end the war can give leverage to North Korea and China against the USFK and the UN command on Korean Peninsula. So that there's concerns and expectations of having declaration to end the war. But I think all depends on how North Korea does on its denuclearization front. So if North Korea actually and indeed denuclearizes itself, all these controversies can calm down. But if it's unlikely that North Korea is denuclearized itself, then the concerns got much bigger in the future.
We're out of time, but thank you for coming in and sharing us your insights as always.
Thank you.